What did you think about in terms of the Peterson conversation? When I go into all of these debates, I'm like, I'm so scared of saying something. Yeah, I have an explanation for everything I do. Oh, I'm screaming from this class. You didn't just hear me screaming, did you? What's your name and what do you do?
Yeah, my name's Dan Wilson. Got my PhD in biological sciences. And yeah, now I work at Janssen as a senior associate scientist, mostly working on like gene therapy stuff, but nothing to do with vaccines.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, the vaccines are gene therapy, but nice try.
That's a common one.
Yeah. What do you, I guess, what did you think about in terms of the Peterson conversation? What do you think about things he said? What do you think about points that can be hammered home more effectively on my end? Yeah, what are your thoughts?
So I think, I'm just going off memory based on what I saw and what I commented on. I mean, I think you did a great job pushing back against his specific claims, like especially the VAERS one when he was like, "What about VAERS?" And you very accurately explained like, no, it's not the gold standard. It never was the gold standard. But I think the challenge with these people is it's like they're always making all these claims, and you kind of have to chase their tail trying to like correct them.
Yeah,
and it's hard to like hold their feet to the fire on one specific claim, and also ask them tough questions to show that they don't really understand what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Peterson understood at all what he was talking about.
Yeah, 100%. As soon as he brought up VAERS, it was very obvious. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that this has more to do with like rhetoric and online debate or whatever you would describe, whatever I do, than just like vaccines in general. But one of the things that's very frustrating, I've been trying to think of how to do this. It would be nice if there was like a public recording or accounting of predictions or claims that people were making. Because like you said, especially when it comes to vaccines, I've learned so much random shit about immunology or virology or vaccines, like at a layman's level. But I've learned so much random shit just because every week there'd be like a new bullshit ass claim that I would have to like research. Like, oh, what is antibody dependent enhancement? I don't know what the this means. Oh, what does it mean when the FDA changed what gene therapy meant? Or, oh, what is it? Like I have to look up all these because every new fucking week there was another stupid claim. But I don't understand how, this is from a content production side, I don't understand how you can make so many bad claims and bad predictions, but your audience doesn't seem to care or hold you accountable for any of them. And then you just move on to the next thing. It's like super frustrating.
Yeah, it's super frustrating. I mean, I've seen this a lot over the pandemic too. Mm-hmm. Like, but the thing is, like, it's their business. Like, these people, they make up these claims to scare people, to keep them, like, scared of whatever they want them to be scared about, so they can keep selling their supplements or their news show or whatever.
Sure.
And so they just keep making stuff up, and I guess the audience doesn't really care, or they string it together in a way that might make sense to someone who doesn't know what they're talking about. But I mean, these people have been running this con for like decades now. So yeah, it's tough to keep track of it all, but there are lists of like indexed lists of claims that have been made throughout the pandemic. I could send you one that was curated by two guys who initially did a lot of debates on social media app called Clubhouse, which is pretty much dead now. Mm-hmm. But they debated a bunch of like insane wackadoos over the course of the pandemic, and they kept a running list of all the common claims they made. Yeah. I think there's over 100 on them.
The claim that I see now that apparently a lot of conservatives are running on that I didn't see as much, but it keeps cropping up, is this idea that they had said in the past that the vaccines were going to be 100% effective and stop 100% of transmissions. And I've tried to run down a lot of these quotes, and usually it's in the context of like, oh, it'll stop the transmission. That'll be the quote from Bill Gates. But when you read like a paragraph before, he's saying that like, yeah, the goal is to bring down the rate of transmission such that we achieve some level of herd immunity because we flatten the curve enough, and then that'll stop transmission. But people just quote the last thing and say that, oh, they said the vaccines were 100% effective because they lied. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen that or have you seen any other like vaccine claims go around. It doesn't seem to come up as much anymore. It just kind of like flares up whenever the topic of vaccines or anything comes up.
Yeah. That's a pretty annoying one. It's common. And you're right. In context, most of these quotes from like Bill Gates or Fauci or Biden, I I say most, but yeah, most of the time they're in context. They're really just talking about like reducing transmission, or it's very clear that they didn't mean actually 100%.
Yeah.
Because even from the clinical trials, it was clear it doesn't prevent 100% of infections, and it's not going to prevent 100% of transmissions. And ultimately, it's like a deep misunderstanding of what vaccines are meant to do, which you did point out in your debate with Jordan Peterson. So I was happy to see that, because that's something that people often get wrong, is that the point of vaccines, like any vaccine, is to prevent the disease, to prevent the illness and the death.
Yeah.
And people will be like, well, what about polio? And it's like, no, even polio vaccines were meant to prevent disease. They don't actually prevent infection or transmission, because whether you get vaccinated with the inactivated version, which is by needle, or you get the oral version, which is a live attenuated virus, in both cases, you're not getting immunity in your gut that's going to be like long lasting enough to prevent transmission. Like if you get infected, you're still probably going to shed polio. But is it going to make you sick? No, because you have an immune memory response that's going to stop the virus from getting into your central nervous system and causing paralysis. So at worst, you'll have like some mild like cold-like symptoms, and you'll never know you even had polio virus in your body.
Yeah,
like,
I think
that's always been the point.
Yeah, I think we have. There's an issue with. I mean, to be fair, I didn't even know this until I got into all the COVID misinformation or whatever. In my mind, there was never much of a separation between an infection and a disease. They were always the same thing to me. And then when COVID rolled around, I was like, coronavirus. Why do we call COVID and SARS-CoV-2 like, I don't understand why these are two different names. And then and then through my reading, I'm like, oh, okay, like a disease and an infection are technically two different things, which I guess makes sense, because there are things like HIV and AIDS are technically two different. Well, they're not technically; they are two different things. Yeah, but I think that the overall level of education on that is just not that good, and then it lets people get more easily baited into the idea that like a vaccine is something that has to prevent 100%. God, I'm getting into weird debates now with people, because people will say things like, all vaccines have always been 100% effective, and that's the definition of a vaccine. I don't remember if Peterson brought this up in our debate, or if this is another debate I was in, but I was like, what do you mean about what about flu vaccines? And somebody made the argument to me that those were never called vaccines, those were just shots or something. Somebody actually used that argument. I was like, wait, what? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, me.
No, they're all vaccines.
Yeah.
No, a vaccine is just anything that prompts your immune system to react against specific pathogens or specific antigens.
Sure.
And that reaction is going to prevent disease. It's frustrating, because they'll prop up quotes made by Bill Gates or Fauci or whatever, where they have that soundbite of saying 100% stop infection, whatever. And on one hand, it's like, no, you're not really listening. But at the same time, the people on those platforms saying those things probably shouldn't have ever said that, because it is unclear messaging. So I think it's fine to acknowledge, like, yeah, messaging was bad. But also, if you were actually paying attention and being honest and listening the whole time, it would be very, very obviously clear that it was not ever meant to be 100% effective in anything.
Yeah, I agree. Hold on. This fucking guy in chat is sharing me. Yeah, I agree with that, although I do like to remind people that the issue wasn't just unclear messaging, which is an issue, but the issue is unclear messaging, kind of, in an environment where there is like half of the society is poised to literally create propaganda around every single thing you say. Because because it was so strange to me, and this is probably going to be part of, I think I've got a debate with that Kevin Bass guy coming up. Do you know who that is?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know him.
Yeah, and that's what our argument is going to be about. He's going to say, oh, they all said it was 100% effective and blah, blah, blah. And it feels like I don't ever in my entire life, I don't remember thinking that ever, that the vaccines were 100% effective. Flatten the curve doesn't imply a 100% effective vaccine. And talking about which vaccines are better than the others doesn't imply 100% effective. But they'll take these like singular quotes, and I'm like, it is possible that some people spoke irresponsibly. It seems like at least some Rachel girls, some spokesman for the CDC, maybe made a few dumb statements that the CDC even publicly like said like, hey, this is not what our guidelines say. But I feel like if you were like a normal, intelligent human being, you're listening, like, yeah, obviously I know, yeah, she misspoke or she was dumb or whatever. But you've got this whole other media apparatus on the other side that is just poised to amplify the fuck out of anything that they perceive to be misinformation. So you'll get this random quote from a CDC spokesperson that everybody on the conservative side will blow up like crazy. And now I don't like that on the medical side, we're having this conversation where we're just saying, okay, guys, well, we need to think about how we can message clearly and effectively. That's not really what the conversation is. The conversation has to be, how can we message in a way that's like propaganda proof, or a way that like can't be misused or abused by the side? That's actually the issue. Because if it was just a matter of like a bunch of people trying to understand what you're saying, anybody in good faith could listen to the majority of the statements and go, yeah, okay, obviously like this person is kind of dumb or this person is misspeaking or whatever. But like the official position of the CDC has never been 100% efficacy on any of the vaccines. So like obviously if a spokesperson says that, they're just retarded or they're misspeaking or they're being too general. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right that number one, they have to get better at messaging to be like propaganda proof, but also I think just in general, more scientists and doctors need to be willing to like kind of step into the arena, so to speak, with the people who are like the public figures who are making these claims. And because it's not hard to demonstrate that they're wrong.
Yeah.
It's just that most scientists and doctors are just not trained to, number one, have those kinds of conversations, and number two, even like seek out the opportunities to do them. It's mostly just like I remember when I was doing my PhD, it was kind of looked down upon if you were spending time doing outreach or doing science communication or anything outside of the lab. It was just like, oh, well, you had time to do this, but you didn't read 5 extra papers. Why didn't you do that? It's like, well, dude, come on. Like, it's not a great culture that fosters.
I do agree with that. Yeah, like I feel retarded sometimes, or it feels frustrating that like, okay, well, I have to argue with either this PhD guy or a guy that's actually a MD on some vaccine misinfo because nobody in the actual medical community wants to do it. So, me, the retarded music school dropout YouTuber, now has to like do a ton of fucking reading of all this bullshit and then try to argue against this guy who has a formal background that completely eclipses mine. It's very frustrating that you can't look to the world of academia to help at all, because the right is no short of like fraudulent doctors and shit that'll come forward and debate shit. And yeah, it feels like that if some of the people that worked in these institutions just got better at their public communication or public speaking or whatever, or were just more blood sports hungry, it would be more effective for them to come out and do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the general attitude is just, oh, ignore it and it'll go away, but that obviously doesn't work. But anyway, if you're going to debate Kevin Bass guy, oh man, he's a trip. We've talked to him before in Twitter Spaces a couple times, and those have not gone well for him. He gets very triggered very easily, at least in that setting. I don't know if he would be more composed in a one-on-one situation.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, I'll just make sure if I'm well enough prepared, then yeah. What about the reputable doctors? They all spouting misinformation as well. I don't know why you guys cite authority when it agrees with you. It's so fucking retarded. Like, you guys will find 10 random fuck retard doctors who happen to agree with your point, and then if I can show you 100,000 on the other side, it's not good enough for you. So if you're going to appeal to the authority of a doctor, then why not appeal to the authority of doctor consensus? If you're going to appeal to the authority of a researcher, why not appeal to the authority of research consensus? When you pick and choose, you're literally committing one of the gravest sins of scientific consensus in the world. Like, oh, well, there's 100 experiments that agree with you, but there's one that agrees with me. Like, confidence intervals aren't measured in 100%. It's like, it's just such a stupid way of approaching any of the conversation. Yeah. And also, past whoever you're citing, you just look at fundamentally like the claims that they're making too. But I don't know. Yeah. Ugh.
No, yeah, that's totally right. I mean, these people, the person, whoever's saying that, I guarantee they're like, I know exactly who they're talking about.
Robert Malone and these other fucking
Robert Malone, McCullough, and like Peter McCullough. I don't understand why anyone takes him seriously. I mean, he's a guy who literally started selling supplements that he claims are going to protect you against spike protein. And then he realized that most of his audience is anti-vax. So he made up this whole story about how the vaccinated are shedding spike protein and you need to protect yourself against them. And he marketed his supplements for that purpose. These supplements have like never been tested, never been put through traditional trials or any form of scientific testing. Like he just says, take this, it'll protect you against spike. Even if you're unvaccinated.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
There's no consistency on any of it, right? Like nobody wanted the mRNA vaccines because it was experimental technology that was only emergency use authorized, but they like went crazy for the monoclonal antibodies because Joe Rogan talked favorably about them. Like there's absolutely no consistency on what people supported or not. So whatever.
That was always so weird to me. I'm like, I don't understand how Joe is sitting there on his show pushing this idea, like, or believing the idea, like, oh, they had to suppress treatments like ivermectin so that the vaccine could come along. And it's like, dude, you like were booty clapping for monoclonal antibodies, and those cost like tens of thousands of dollars a dose. Damn. So good on you for supporting big pharma and getting something totally wrong, because we had early treatments. It just wasn't enough. Like we needed more solutions.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I might shoot you general questions I have. I'm probably have to put together a little doc just so that I can have like studies and shit on hand.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, fuck. Was there anything else in that conversation you remember, or anything I said that I could have been clear on, or anything incorrect about, or?
To be honest, I mostly was like just bewildered by Jordan Peterson because he was unhinged in that conversation.
Yeah, he really and the C16 shit, I think, just rotted the fuck out of his mind. Yeah. And the shamelessness. But bro, when I go into all of these debates, I'm so fucking scared of saying something stupid or retarded where it's like, oh God, I just got caught. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. For him to like so accurately and with such conviction like scream at me the like, what about the Bears? And I'm like, oh God, I would kill myself if I made a mistake like this and got caught having no fucking idea what I'm talking about. Like, oh God, yeah, it's just so frustrating because you have to run down so many claims. Oh yeah, and he was talking about like the 20% excess deaths in Europe, which I went and I looked up afterwards, and apparently it's all of these countries are like below 10%, but there is like some excess death, but there's like a variety of different explanations for it. But the idea that it's just like millions and millions of people dying of vaccines, I think that's another one that Weinstein, Brett, is pushing there's been 13 million deaths worldwide due to the COVID vaccines or some shit because of some dumb fucking guy study. Yeah. Ugh.
Yep. I mean, the excess deaths thing is just he was totally unhinged about that, and the easiest way to like visualize that is if you just compare like cumulative excess deaths since 2021 and look at the least vaccinated countries in Europe versus the most vaccinated countries. Like on the most vaccinated end, it's countries like Sweden and Denmark, and they're literally having the lowest cumulative excess deaths since 2021. And on the other end, it's countries like Bulgaria, which have the lowest vaccination rates and the highest excess deaths. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think Jordan Peterson probably watched like some John Campbell videos on YouTube. Oh God. Yeah. And just is repeating them because he was totally lost.
Oh, he is 100%. Because when I started YouTubing a lot of the claims he was making, that's usually the first stop. I was like, oh, okay. Because like with conservatives, if you want to prepare for a debate, usually you just have to try to find like, well, who's the leading conspiratard spreader? And you find that guy and you just watch it, and that will be like a blueprint for your entire conversation. It's like a cheat sheet for the conversation. And yeah, when I started looking it up, it was a lot of John Campbell videos saying a lot of the shit that he was saying about all the excess deaths and everything. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that Brett Weinstein said is absolutely insane too. Because the source that he used to call that a credible number on how many people the COVID vaccines killed, it's from a guy who, number one, doesn't think that any viruses exist or cause disease, which is okay, like batshit. But the way he came to that number is he just looked at all the excess deaths from 2021 onward, assumed that COVID doesn't exist, and just attributed all the excess deaths to
the
vaccines.
Okay.
Like that's literally all he did. It's crazy. And people just kind of ran with it.
Nice. I've seen the thing that he was referencing. I think I saw a couple of teardowns of it. Like I saw there were posts about it. I just didn't read through it, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it.
Okay. I'm trying to think. Oh, yeah. Here's random questions. Do you have any idea if viral load impacts your likelihood of transmission? Are there studies on that? Like if you've got a high viral load versus a low viral load, or like you're asymptomatic versus symptomatic, do you know if the transmitting rate is still the same, or is it higher if you've got a higher viral load or you're symptomatic, or has that been studied at all?
As far as I know, for SARS-CoV-2, it's not well defined. It's going to vary by virus. Like sometimes, for instance, like pox virus diseases, like smallpox, monkeypox, even viruses like herpes. Those viruses are mostly going to shed when you have like open sores.
Yeah.
But for respiratory viruses, it really depends. Viral load definitely is going to play a factor in it, but there's a lot of other factors too. Like you can still shed respiratory viruses while you're pre-symptomatic or asymptomatic, and even for a period while you have symptoms. So it depends on the virus, and I'm not aware offhand of any convincing data that says like, okay, we can measure this viral load in a person and that correlates to their likelihood of spreading it onto others. That's generally pretty hard to study.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. All right. I'll probably dig around for that, but okay. Well, yeah, I don't have anything else. Chat with you later, or you could DM me if you have anything and you want to bring anything up.
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, let me know if you end up talking to or scheduling something with that Kevin Bass guy, because I could pretty much tell you what he's going to bring up.
Sure. I'll shoot you the thing that he wants to go over. So yeah, sure.
Okay. All right, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Have fun. Be careful.
All right. You too. Bye.
Bye. When was the last time non-compliance with a vaccine resulted in not being able to exercise religious liberties? I don't even know what your question is. You're just asking about lockdowns in general? Was that debunk the funk? Yeah. This guy. We watched a few videos of his on...
Hey, I'm Dr. Wilson. I'm a PhD...
Why couldn't he talk to me on this microphone?
And learning about these topics, I suggest we do that. So the choice is yours, Brett. You can pick which one you want to do. And I'll say in about a month, if I don't hear from you, I'll take that as you don't want to talk on a...
People are still so hurt about lockdowns, but forget the first ones were under Trump. Were they, though, under Trump? Wasn't that technically all decided at the state level? I don't remember if the federal government was able to mandate any of that. I think that all happened with, I think that all happened at the state level, I believe. Are we reading about Havana syndrome? Yeah, we're doing it, yeah. But the Trump administration encouraged it, though? Probably, because they didn't want it to f*** them in the election. Kind of like how Biden right now is telling Netanyahu, you need to wrap this shit the f*** up. I don't hurt my election, bitch. One sec. I mean, let's get super authoritarian over a virus with a fraction of a percentage death rate and just act like everything is legit. I can't get there. Okay, but how many months or years will you guys talk about like trans athletes? What's the percentage of people impacted by that? It doesn't matter who locks you down and infringes your rights, like practicing religion. Once you allow that as a society, you give the government the authority to do that. in the future without recourse, you figuratively break the glass ceiling. Like, what about my right to not be infected? Do I not have a right to be like safe or free of disease from other people that's like easily preventable? What about my right there? It's not a one, you're acting like it's a one-way street. There are multiple competing rights here that are being impacted. One is your right, a negative right to assemble and worship or assemble in a public place. That is a negative right that hopefully the government ensures you. But there's also the negative right to for me to be protected and for me to be safe. I have a right to not have you attack me, to not have you shit on me, to not have you blow smoke in my face. I have a right to not have you cough on me or get me sick all the time, right? It's a balance of rights there in a society that you have to figure out what the government is going to protect. It's not just a one-way thing. Like, how much are we going to destroy the rights of these poor, innocent, religious people for no fucking reason? I don't agree with them, but you can stay home if you don't want to get infected. Okay, and if you want to pray, you can do that in your house too, dipshit. What do you think people did before fucking churches? Jews lost their entire fucking country and managed to find ways to pray around the world. You can pray Muslims carry fucking carpets around with them, okay, so they can point towards fucking Mecca and say their fucking prayers every day. You can't do that as a Christian? You can't get on your knees and say a fucking prayer? Christ, get the fuck out of here, dude. I don't agree that your right to be protected can infringe on the public's rights, but who cares about COVID vaccines? This is 3 years old. Yeah, no, it is old. You're right. Those who would sacrifice freedom for safety deserve neither. Okay. We should just have there should be no police and no public protection for anything ever. How base would they? They'd just disband the whole police force. This is the easiest counter in the world. Even Peterson was asking for it. If you don't want to get vaxxed under a workers' vaccine mandate, quit your job and go live in the jungle. True. Do you think a huge reason why people were mad about the religious thing is because churches couldn't collect money from churchgoers? No, it's just all part of the constellation. That's it. It's just, these are what things that people told them to be mad about, and now they're mad about it. You use Jews for an example. They literally congregate to pray. They gather in groups. You really, if you're a Jew and you've only got 3 people with you, God doesn't listen to you? He only accepts what? Group DMs? Come on. Couldn't the BLM protesters have protested at home too? Were there restrictions on public gatherings outside? If they were protesting in restricted areas, or they were gathering in too much, then them too. My understanding is the outdoor stuff wasn't as big of a deal. Or I don't know if there were restrictions on outdoor gatherings. I don't remember. I think there was for a week or two in the beginning. And I know that because Chris Christie got in big trouble because I think he shut down a beach and was like at it with his wife. Oh yeah, the BLM exceptions, LOL. What did I just, do you see how poisoned your mind is against everything I'm saying? That you can't even, you're not even hearing the words that are coming out of my mouth? What was the exception? If the BLM people were gathering in an area where it's banned or prohibited, then don't. I don't remember the outdoor restrictions. They were restrictions and they shouldn't have done that either. Jesus Christ. Those aren't rights, Destiny. Your argument is fundamentally wrong. What's not rights? You don't think you have rights to not be, like, forcibly infected with diseases? Isn't it literally misdemeanors for giving people STDs if you knowingly have them and you don't tell them? They said racism was a bigger public health crisis than COVID, so they allowed it. Yeah, I saw that letter. That was fucking cringe. You don't have to pray with 10, but it's part of the religion. Some people only pray with 10 people. For example, some people will not go on vacation if there isn't a minyan, quorum of 10 men. Well, time to hop in the Discord group chat. Can you look at vaccine studies prior to 2019? All the ones I'm seeing are showing most major vaccines were about a 90% success rate. Yeah, the ones that we mandated, but flus were never 90%. A flu vaccine was never 90%. I don't think you typically vaccinate children with highly mutating diseases. Usually they were for the solid ones where it's like, well, you'll get this vaccine because it like lasts for either a long time or your entire life, and they're the best ones to give. But like if you got a flu shot as a kid, which some people did, then you would I mean, you can get flu shots as kids, and those were like, what, anywhere from 40 to 70%, I think, depending on the year. Now, in hindsight, would you say the reduction in suffering from lockdowns was worth it regarding the rise in social issues after the lockdowns, i.e. youth issues or depression? I don't remember how many of those things actually came to fruition. I think retrospectively, to say whether or not the lockdowns were worth it, probably not, but we either needed to be more hardcore with the lockdowns or we needed to be way less hardcore with them. But we walked this stupid middle ground where you didn't really do anything effectively at all, and it was just kind of a waste of time. But also evaluating things retrospectively is a lot different than evaluating them at the time with the information we had. The point is that once you give the government the authority to limit your First Amendment rights, you get into risky territory in regards to government overreach. Again, we can't point to any time we as a society allow. There's tons of restrictions on your First Amendment rights. What the fuck are you talking about? There are certain like trade secrets I might not be able to say if I sign an NDA with somebody. I can't plan to do a crime with somebody and speak about that. That's criminalized speech. I can't incite people to riot or violence. I can't go into a movie theater and scream fire. I can't. What do you mean? There's tons of restrictions on lots of First Amendment rights. It just depends. The First Amendment doesn't mean you have the freedom to say anything at any point in time, everywhere you want, no matter what, with no restrictions. There are already restrictions on the First Amendment. Obviously, these restrictions are usually very carefully cut out, and they're very purposefully, but at the time, people were saying it was stupid, that the people at risk were old and fat, but you fascist Democrats didn't care. Old and fat? Hello, that's like 50% of the US population. Right, but you mandated masks for 6-year-olds. Yeah, because I think the idea was you were trying to prevent people from just spreading the disease at all. I don't know at the end of the day if mask mandates for children, or I think closing schools probably wasn't a good idea. Or closing schools isn't a good idea. But you guys you can't even intellectually grapple with that. In your mind, you're not thinking, was closing schools efficacious or not? You're thinking, why did the fascist Democrats lock us out of schools to destroy our freedoms because they hate freedom and they're communists? Like, that's where your mind is. You're not even able to come to the table to have that discussion. And lots of people said that it was a bad idea at the time, but they were called crazy. Because, Alex is having the same problem. Hold on. I want to ask, let's just ask a question. I'm just curious how many people, listen, I'm just curious. I'm not going to preload this at all. I just want to ask a question, okay? Let's say that John and Andy are here, okay? John and Andy are these two people. And they're looking at a bowl that's turned upside down on a table, okay? Underneath this bowl, there can either be an apple, a banana, is that with one N each? A grape, or an orange. Okay? There are limits on our First Amendment rights, but when was the last time we saw the government tell grandma she can't go to church, mosque, or any other religious house of worship? I don't know. If I Google right now, there's never in the entire history of the United States ever been lockdowns due to like weathers. There's never been like mass curfews. This has never happened at any point in all of U.S. history for any disease, for any war event, for anything ever. That's never, ever, ever happened ever in the whole history of the United States. Okay, sorry. John and Andy. Okay. They're both looking at this, all right? Where's my selector? John is asked, not for a long period of time, remember that churches / mosques / temples were closed in California and not bars. Is that true? I thought everything was closed in California. I lived in COVID in California. Did they not close any? I thought restaurants and bars got closed too. Is he making it up or? Okay, we've got John, and we've got Andy. Okay. Now, both of these people are asked, what do you think is under the bowl? What do you think is under the bowl? John says, I'm not sure. It's like a 25% chance that it could be an apple, it could be a grape, it could be a banana, it could be an orange. So John doesn't know. 25%. He's not sure. Could be any of these things, all right? Andy looks at it, and Andy says, there's an apple under there. Trust me, I know. It's an apple, okay? Andy says it's an apple, all right? John's not sure. He says, I don't know, 25% chance it can be anything. Andy says it's an apple, all right? Here's the question. Do we need to know what's under the bowl to know if to know if Andy or John are making intelligent guesses? Yes, no, not sure. So let me just, one more time. John is guessing 25% it could be any of these four things, and Andy says it's an apple, all right? So my question is do we need to know what's under the bowl to know if Andy or John are making intelligent guesses, all right? You see my super chat? Nope. Destiny has to frame COVID as totally random guesses because conservatives were correct about too many things. No, they weren't. Conservatives were correct. You realize like more conservatives died per capita than liberals, right? Even though they technically had less of a reason to because they were even more spread out. Liberals live in cities. You fucking retards actually death culted yourself because you were too stupid to vote by mail for Trump, so your dumb fucking fat loser candidate lost, and then you fucking died like retards because you were too stupid to get fucking vaccinated, more than the liberals did en masse. Like, okay, I imagine some of these are troll votes. So what, 12, 13% of chat is below, what is it, would this be 75 IQ, 80 IQ? I'd say 80% of that is a troll. I mean, we have no context for the analogy to know if it's an educated or intelligent guess. It's a retarded analogy. I gave you this is all the information. This is all the information that you need. That's it. It's a problem. If you're asked, John throws a ball at 25 miles per hour, how long does it take the ball, assuming there's no friction or anything else, assuming the ball travels, how long does it take to go 25 miles? Do you ask like, well, you didn't tell me if John was on a moving car or not. What?
Tell me. I just started turning in. I want to see if I'm a retard or not. Tell me whatever it is. This looks like a logic puzzle. Please.
Tell you, what do you want me to tell you?
Wait, is this like a thing that like you get right or wrong or no?
Yeah, the question is
okay.
Do we need to know what's under the bowl to know if John or Andy are making a good guess about what's under the bowl?
Say that again. Is there any more context to
there's
it?
There's a bowl on a table that's upside down. John and Andy are both told that there's either an apple, a grape, a banana, or an orange underneath the bowl. That's all the information they're given. John says,
Gotcha.
then they're asked to make a guess, or what do you think is under the bowl? And John says, I don't know, I can't know. It's 25% for anything. And Andy says, there's an apple. Then the question is do we need to know what's under the bowl? Do we need to flip the bowl over to see who's making a good guess or not?
Well, we would know that the person who says that they don't know is the correct person, because I think that's what you're saying.
Like, wait, what? Say that again?
If you're saying which of the two people is more correct, the person who's saying, I have no idea what's under there, obviously. And is for us to judge if they're good guessers, then...
The question is do we need to know the outcome of this event to know if the guess for the outcome was good or bad?
Hold on, I'm thinking, I'm sorry. Do we know that they don't know?
Yes.
Oh. Then we can say they're both dumb. Or that the guy who says it's an apple is dumb, sorry. We know that he doesn't know, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, am I retarded?
No, you got there in the end, yeah.
Well, I didn't have all the pieces. I didn't know that you didn't know that they didn't know, right? Because think about it in a different way. What about if I don't know? Sorry, let me take this step back. New scenario, okay? You got Lycan and Steve arguing over what's... I come in the room. Lycan and Steve are arguing about what's underneath the bowl. But I don't know that you guys actually don't know.
Yeah.
What about in that case? Because what about if you did know? That's a different situation. Oh my God.
Wow. Well, you probably have to gather some more information. Why did you call Dark Viper AU mentally ill in your last upload instead of debating him? Because he is mentally ill. I think I have debated him in the past, or I think I've talked to him. I don't remember, but the guy is crazy. If he wants to talk, I could. Actually, no, wait, never mind. Fuck him. I won't. I think he was on some huge explosion, like doing his yearly bitching about copyright shit, and I think I offered to debate him on it, and he's like, no, I only want to debate XQC. And I'm like, okay, well, fuck you. And then after his popularity fell off from the... Well, he didn't fall off, but after the huge surge of the copyright bitch and moaning went away, I think then he was like, okay, we can debate. I'm like, well, fuck you. No, I'm not going to talk to you now. Fuck you.
Oh, is this the guy that is suing Chud Logic or threatening to?
He might be, yeah.
You know, all these people, there's a bunch of people on the internet that threaten to sue people. And I feel like none of these people understand how ungodly expensive it is to even do things like discovery. And also how invasive and insane that process is. You can tell when they just like so quickly throw it out like it's nothing. Like they're just going to go to court and put in a few dockets and I'm going to be in your Gmail account or something tomorrow. It's like such an insane process for shit like that.
Yeah?
Yeah. Like discovery could cost a lot. It depends on what it is of what's going on.
I've heard
like
if you're doing a civil case, discovery, if you're getting to the point of like all that, doing discovery, that you're looking at around like 30 to 50,000 by that point, basically.
Well, it depends. That's if it's a minor thing. Like for instance, if someone was to sue you, actually, I mean, I don't want. Let me use a different example. If someone was to sue a very large, like, someone who has a very large amount of content online, the cost of doing discovery for that person would be very high because of the amount of resources it would take to comply with discovery, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, because you'd have to, especially like once you start doing depositions and going through all the evidence, you're gonna have to pay a law firm and all their associates however much time it takes to go through.
Usually
all
like
the fucking
hundreds of
material.
thousands of dollars, I would say.
Possibly, yeah, depending on, yeah.
Sorry, I just saw Logic Puzzle and I thought I would come in, but I'll let you get back to it.
Okay, I'm gonna read the Havana thing, hopefully. Love you.
Ooh, excited. Bye.
Careful. It's funny how you lambast conservatives when you are the most status quo, authorities always tell the truth conservative I've ever heard in my fucking life. It's not that authorities always tell the truth. It's that I'm looking at an entity like the FDA. The FDA has to publicize a lot of their shit. It's a government entity. It's ran by the government, that is elected by the people, that has a different head of state at any given point in time after elections. They can nominate new heads of all this shit, right? So I trust that process. Now, the FDA might get things wrong, of course, but I trust that process. You will look at the FDA and you'll say, like, they're about as credible as one guy on YouTube who gets paid a fuck ton of money to tell you exactly what you want to hear. If you look at these two processes as being equally likely to deliver a truthful outcome, you are fucking retarded, okay? I hope to God one day Joe Biden taxes me enough so that my tax money can pay for a permanent caretaker so your dumbass doesn't wander off into the fucking street and get hit by a car. FDA gets paid by the institutions they regulate. Yeah, when you pay for drug approvals and shit, some of that money goes into the FDA. That doesn't mean that they pay to get the drug approved. Your gas tax, also goes to the fucking. Would that be a direct comparison? Gas tax going to states for roads to incentivize them to continue to have cars. I mean, there's nothing wrong with collecting fees off of people that you regulate. I don't understand why that would ever be a bad thing. If I had to guess. I should know. No, I would. Why would I know this? If I had to guess, restaurants probably pay some fee for food inspection and shit as well. But would you say that the FDA doesn't work because it's also paid for partially by restaurants and shit that pay taxes and fees for it's fucking retarded. How do you explain the opioid crisis if the FDA is working so well? Is the opioid crisis the fault of the FDA? Yes, no, Keek. Yes, per Netflix. Oh, huh. Okay. Where do you think there are conflicts of interest? For what? Have you seen the new Factorio Space trailer? No, I'm just waiting for it to launch. Please don't ban me, but you can't pretend you're in favor of progressive taxes anymore because you left California for Florida specifically for income taxes. What is... Just because you're in favor of taxes to pay for social programs doesn't mean you donate all of your money to the government. If there's ways to minimize your tax burden, I'm going to take it. I'm in favor of taxes for wealthy people, but I also have tax-deferred retirement plans. I'm not evading. Tax evasion is legal, avoidance is legal. I'm not evading taxes. I just live in a state that has a lower tax footprint. I do other things to minimize my tax footprint as well. Being in favor of a progressive taxation system doesn't mean that you're obligated to pay every single fucking tax you can find, right? Or donate extra money to the IRS. Taxes for thee, not for me. I paid more in taxes last year, Francisco, than you'll probably earn income for the rest of your life. What are you talking about? You're so fucking retarded. Nothing triggers me more than a $27,000 a year fat fucking retard conservative scarfing down McDonald's who's going to be consuming all my fucking tax money later on when your fat ass is dying of type 2 diabetes because you're too stupid to even take the fucking insulin, okay? Defending my right to have no taxes. Every single time I just want you to know this. Just know this deep in your soul, okay? Every time you tweet and vote for lower taxes, it's helping me and not you. If you shave 1% off my tax burden, I'm saving more money than your AGI for the year. I hope you know. I just want you to know that. You know what that means? That means that even when I'm losing, I'm winning. Even when I'm losing, I'm winning. Because if you get your way, you just continue to get fucked, and the rich guys like me continue to make even more fucking money. That's exactly what I want. Engage with the steelman argument. What is the steelman argument? Is legal offshore tax avoidance acceptable? If it's Illuminator, thanks for the 5 gifted subs, and Kose Bitar, thanks for the 193 viewer host. I don't know what the rationale is for offshore taxable accounts. I don't know how that works or what the legal justification or more. I just don't know about it. I can't have a strong opinion about it. That's like when you say Hassan doesn't operate his business in a socialist manner. Yeah, because Hassan thinks capitalism is morally evil and that socialism is morally righteous. I'm a capitalist. I've never said anything different. What the fuck? Yes, but you believe in high taxes and government programs to help the poor. I don't believe in high taxes. I don't care about taxes as a moral thing. What I think is we need certain government programs, and then we should tax appropriately to pay for those programs. We should also tax progressively. I pay a progressive tax. I pay a lot in taxes, okay? That doesn't mean I'm obligated to move to states with the highest tax burden and pay taxes there, especially if I don't get anything out of it. You say you want high taxes, then you try to get away with low tax possible. What kind of hypocrite? I've never said okay, I will unban you from all of my shit permanently when you can send me an email where I'm saying like, we need high taxes. I've never said that in my entire life. What a fucking retarded point. You said that rich people should be taxed higher like a week ago. I believe in a progressive tax scheme. Yes, when you have brackets, do I need to explain what tax brackets are? Do you know what progressive taxation means? Your model of taxation leads to a state like California. The conservative model leads to a state like Florida. Sir, Florida and California have nothing to do. They just, one uses an income tax and the other uses another type of tax. Sales tax? If Florida uses sales tax, technically they use a progressive taxation system as well. Like, I buy more shit than a poor Cuban living in Hialeah. So technically I'm progressively taxed in Miami as well. If you look at as an absolute value, as a per capita of income, food isn't taxed. I don't know as much there, but what do you think of a wealth tax? Wealth tax are retarded. Does Florida have a large tourism tax on eating out? I don't know if there's a specific tourism tax here. Florida can get away with no income tax due to the insane property tax and tourism in general. Dan said there's no property taxes here, or they're really low, so apparently that's not true. So you want high taxes, but not for yourself because you spend more money in the economy than a poor person? When have I... This is the thing. Can we just watch a Destiny YouTube video? Where didn't I explain this in a video? You're grouping the thing. You're grouping the tax with the moral thing that it's supposed to deliver on. These two things are separate, okay? I think we should have social programs, okay, that help the poor, all right? Typically, you need taxes to fund it, and progressive taxation makes sense because of the concept of marginal utility is what you would say. The concept of marginal utility. I don't think taxes are good. I think social programs are good. So we should tax whatever we need for our social programs. That's it. FICA is not progressive? No, but the federal income tax brackets are progressive. And what taxes will fund that if you move to a state to lower your own taxes? Your federal income taxes, your federal income taxes are not impacted by the state that you live in. The only thing that changes are your state income taxes. The federal income tax burden, and then your self-employment or your FICA tax burden is the same no matter where you live in the United States. Do you understand that? You can't move to another state to reduce your federal or FICA tax burden. No one said federal. Why are you? Because when you're talking about like federal programs and shit, then I think the largest programs that we have that run for welfare and shit are huge federal programs. For whatever state programs they have here in Florida, whatever taxes I pay on shit here probably funds those programs. So then you don't want to contribute to your state's social programs? I do contribute. I contributed however they collect taxes here is the way that I fucking pay them. Do you think that those who make significantly more money are morally responsible to in philanthropy? I don't know. If you want to, I guess. I don't think you're morally obligated to. What are the property taxes like here? I don't know. I rent apartments. You say you want a progressive taxation bracket thingy, yet you move to a state to not get taxed in said taxation bracket. Sounds pretty retarded to me. In California, you don't get anything for your taxes. I don't see where the money goes. I don't have a strong attachment to California, so I'm going to move to a place that minimizes my tax footprint. Same thing with me contributing to SEP IRA, okay? I give money to a SEP IRA because the government has the ability for you to put money into an account to minimize your tax footprint. You can advocate for a thing and then maximize your existence within the thing, right? Like, let's say that I think that you should have to volunteer for an hour on Sundays as part of some government program. And I think that'd be a good thing if we mandated that socially. If it's not mandated socially, that doesn't mean you have to do it, otherwise you're a hypocrite. There's a difference between a mandate top down from society versus an individual's acts in society. Now, there are some things that might be like clearly contradictory. So like if you were engaged in hardcore like tax evasion, that would be kind of questionable. Hold on, why are you illegally evading taxes? But as long as there are legal ways to minimize your tax footprint, you should always take advantage of those legal ways. I've never said anything different ever. And I've never condemned anybody for not doing that. Wanting to minimize your tax footprint, you don't have to pay the maximum amount of taxes to think that like a progressive taxation system is fine. The government taking 30% of my fucking money is theft, period. Well, if it makes you feel better, my dude, the fact that you type that means you're probably too retarded to earn the amount of money where they're taking 30% of your fucking money. They probably take like fucking 5%, but you're too fucking retarded to realize it. Don't you have a Q&A right now? Yeah, a guy is doing a class. I guess so. Why Florida and not a blue state that uses the tax effectively, or do those not exist? I don't know. I live in Florida because Melina wanted a place that was warm, that she could go to the beach at all the time, and was on the East Coast. So Florida was the only thing that fit because East is the time zone for the United States. Then you shouldn't criticize Hassan for not running his business in a socialist manner. You can't. I don't know how to break this. I can't break you out of this. I can't break you out of this pattern. I don't think that paying high or low taxes, I don't think that's a moral thing. There's nothing moral. That's just a thing that people do. The moral part is the social programs that we have. These should be funded. And the best way to fund those is typically a progressive taxation system. Everybody in chat, if you're advocating for a flat tax, do it. Actually, you should. I changed my mind. You're right. The conservatives won, okay? The conservatives won. I agree. Flat tax is best, okay? Fuck progressive taxation. We should do a flat tax, okay? For the record, this is the only time I'll say this. I made $2 million last year, and I paid $680,000 in taxes. If you want to cut that down and give me a 10% flat tax, I will gladly shit out $250,000 and watch you fucking losers drown, okay? If that's what you want to do, I will do that, okay? Yeah, my tax rate is huge. I get fucking raped by the federal government. I don't want to pay an extra $150,000 in taxes in fucking New York or California, okay? But if you want to do a flat tax because you think that's more fair, and you think that you and your entire family that live in cockroach-infested fucking trailer trash bullshit, that you guys can come up with the extra money to pay for your own fucking food stamps, if you want to do that, amen, brother, go for it. I want to see you making $36,000 a year, paying $3.6K to the government because you want a 10% flat tax, and I will gladly take the $500,000 in tax savings, okay? If that's what you want to do, amen, brother, go for it. You won. You won. You guys win this debate. I am in favor of the flat tax, okay? There you go. I support them 100%. I'm a flat tax guy right now, okay? Are we doing this on Zoom or Discord? If you want social programs to be funded, why not go to a state that effectively funds its taxes? Do you think Florida's social programs are well funded? I have no idea. I don't know. I live here because Melina wanted to move here. That's why I moved to Florida. Why do you operate under the assumption that everyone who supports a flat tax is a poor schmuck living off of government benefits? Isn't that an insane viewpoint? No, because it tends to be fat, type 2 diabetic, retard conservatives that support that point. Or maybe some business owners who are just like, I just want to. But I feel like once you hit a certain level of wealth, I don't know how much you're super bought into that. And I feel like I hear a lot of wealthy, rich people talk about like, yeah, we can pay more in taxes for income taxes. I don't think, at the end of the day, the reality, the true reality, but you motherfucking retards don't understand fuck all about taxes. The true reality is at the end of the day, tax brackets don't don't really fucking matter that much, because really wealthy people tend to have their money in a whole bunch of different areas that shields them from just strict federal tax bracket liability. So your income is coming through the form of appreciation in capital in a business, appreciation in stock or other assets, money that's being diverted to other sorts of tax advantaged retirement or after death vehicles. There's a whole bunch of other ways that wealthy. So while you guys are clamoring for like flat taxes to save people that earn infinitely more than you anyway, it's not actually at the end of the day making that big of a fucking difference. But not you? No, because all of my money is straight income, and I don't have any money to dump it into a business at the moment, so I just get fucked. That's why I'm in favor of the flat tax now, because I'm getting fucked by the government, okay? Flat tax me, and we'll be good to go. That's what I want. Hello. Hey, how's it going?
Doing well, except we can't really hear you. Can you hear us?
Wait, if you can't really hear me, how were you able to respond when I asked how you were doing?
Well, because I can hear you, you just sound really far away.
Well, I mean, technically, I am really far away. That's the beauty of the
It's
internet.
an audio problem on our end.
Okay, you're fine.
But you can hear us okay?
I can hear you okay, yeah.
Uh-oh.
Blue states need to pay high taxes to subsidize the red states. If blue states are subsidizing red states through federal taxation, the state taxes shouldn't be impacting that. That won't have an impact. As much as I'll be showing on red states for being welfare queens. Hi, what's up? Is it working?
Sorry, Steven. Give me 1 minute.
Okay. Not calling you a hypocrite because I don't think you are one. However, if someone says the government should make people work 1 hour in soup kitchens, yet they don't do anything, aren't they a hypocrite? Not necessarily, no. Advocating for a government policy because you think top down if everybody's bought into doing something, but if it's not there, then there's no point. It doesn't necessarily make you a hypocrite. It's like saying that like if 10 of us get together, we can pick this car up and like move it across the street. And there's like 2 people that are advocating for that, and the other 8 don't want to. And the 8 look at the 2 people like, why aren't you guys trying to move it? It's like, we can't move it on our own. We're not. This isn't like solving the problem. Then why do you shit on Hassan for doing the same thing? Because Hassan says that capitalism and the participation in capitalism is inherently immoral. I don't believe that.
Can you try again?
Hi, can you hear me? Hello, hello?
Nope, no, we can't hear you at all.
Oh, nice.
Let's try it again.
No offense, but it seems like you have a convenient explanation for everything. Yeah, I have an explanation for everything I do because I'm 35 years old. I've been on the internet for 15 years. Oh, I'm screaming from this class. Yes, because I've been doing this for a long time. Of course I've got an explanation for everything I do. You think I just do... Wait, he can't hear me, can he? Oh, hey, hello?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wait, you didn't just hear me screaming, did you?
No.
Oh, okay, I wasn't screaming. I was just kidding. Okay.
No, we could see you being a little animated, but
You're good. Don't worry about it.
no, hi Steven, thanks for doing this. This is the class for this evening. You probably can't see all of them, but they're all hiding behind computers out here.
Yeah, you're good.
And we have had some interaction with your work. We listened to the Rabbit Hole podcast. Some people are already familiar with who you are and what you do, but I wondered if you wouldn't give 30 seconds about what you consider to be your sort of like forte and sort of content creation.
My forte in content creation is I think I do a decent job at doing a deep level of research into topics that I argue about, and I'm good at presenting that information in a convincing way in a live format with incredibly hostile interlocutors, I guess we would say. Yeah. In a single sentence.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I was just, as I was trying to fix the sound here, I was recounting that you have recently been on with Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson and some other pretty, well-known conservative content creators. And it seems like you do a pretty good job at keeping up with what some people might call like a Gish Gallop, or ways in which that they use their rhetoric, which often confuses other people. And makes it difficult to stick with them. Why do you think it is that you're able to sort of keep up with those things better than the average person?
Why? I don't know. Genetic? I'm just kidding. I don't know. It's probably a combination of like I grew up in a really politically, would I say politically hostile environment? My mom and dad are like real. Well, my mom especially is super big into politics, so I grew up following politics a lot just because she's Cuban. They felt very strongly about being pro-conservative and pro-Trump and or back then it was pro-Bush and anti-Clinton. So I grew up in that like really heavy, argumentative, and politically plugged-in environment. Then I got into video games and stuff in my 20s. Well, really earlier than that, but like professionally as part of streaming in my 20s. And a lot of the video game stuff online was literally how evil and mean and horrible could you be to the other people online. So eventually I got into politics around 2015, 2016. So the combination of like the political attunement plus the online hardcore aggressive style of insulting and attacking people basically spat out in 2016 me, who was like a left-leaning debater guy, but who was also very aggressive, more so than the average left-leaning debater person. And then I've just kind of like grown from there.
All right, I'm going to open it up to the students. Does anybody have a question they want to open with Stephen? Yes, go ahead. And I'll relay it if you can't hear it well.
I cannot hear anything. It sounds like you guys are underwater, so you'll have to repeat it for me if you can. It's not your fault. It's just
Sure, no
guys.
problem. Yeah, so the student asked, what is your goal in a debate? Is it to convince the other person or to get your points across? When you enter, that sort of thing, what are you looking for?
For debates, your goal is always going to change based on the topic, based on the person you're talking to, based on the conviction morally and empirically you have for your position, and based on, did I say if there's an audience listening or not? All of these things are going to factor into what your goal is for a particular debate. I'm going to use debate very broadly here, but let's say I really want to send my son to a certain school, and my son's mom has a big disagreement on that, right? Well, if I approach that as a debate, I need to make sure that I'm being empathetic because I don't want to make an enemy of my kid's mom, obviously. I need to make sure that my arguments are both empirically sound, like, look, this school is better, and emotionally based, look, it'll be better for our son, and you want this to, be good for our child. And then I might need to be aware of like if she's got a mom or friends that are convincing of something else, I need to be aware of like what that audience would say, what her friends might say about that. Let's say that I'm having a debate with somebody who's generally politically similar to me in front of a school, right? Well, in this debate setting, it's not going to be cutthroat. We're in front of students, so hopefully we're not going to be screaming at each other. If we're generally pretty politically aligned, I don't have to make a bunch of moral arguments. They're going to be mainly empirical because we already agree morally on things. And it's probably just going to be a gentle back and forth to kind of show the students like both sides of what we're talking about. If I'm having a debate online against a guy who identifies as like a far right, white nationalist or Nazi dude, I probably want to be a bit more aggressive in my communication there. I probably want to push back both morally and empirically on a lot of claims. And I want to be aware that people are watching this looking to validate points of view that I might find morally repugnant. So I have to be a little bit more aggressive in how I angle that. But that's just like 3 examples. There's like a million other things that factor into how you approach a conversation. There's no one size fits all for like, oh, well, when you debate, the goal is to change the person's mind. Like that's not the goal of almost any conversation you have ever, even when you really do want somebody's mind to change, right?
If you really do want someone's mind to change, are you approaching it like emotionally or empirically or a combination of those three?
I think you asked the CIA to bring back MK Ultra and give them I don't know. If you truly want to change somebody's mind, there are going to be some factors at play that are within your control and some that are outside of your control. So things that are going to be outside of your control are going to be things like who's their social group. That would be like a first question. So, for instance, let's say I'm going to have a religion debate with somebody, and I'm personally a strong atheist. Let's say that I want to debate somebody who, he lives online. He's got like a diverse group of friends, and he's like culturally Muslim or something, right? Like we can debate about it, and I might be able to change his mind, maybe not, depends on how the debate goes. But let's say instead of that, let's say I'm debating a guy who's like in a hardcore religious family who, goes to mosque or a Christian who goes to like a super like Baptist church or whatever, and I want to debate that guy. The chances of me changing the mind of somebody whose social group heavily reinforces the political, the particular point of view that I'm trying to move them off of is going to go way, 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 way down because that person just doesn't have the personal social flexibility to actually adopt a different point of view there. That's one of like, I could talk like for an hour about like any of these particular things, but that would be one thing you would consider as like a factor outside of your control. Other factors outside of your control might literally be like the age of the person, the background of a person. Like if they come from, if I want to convince somebody that America sucks and they're from the United States, I might have a harder time than if I'm convincing somebody America sucks and they're from Palestine, right? Depending on a person's background, those are going to be things outside of my control. For things in my control, I would say that speaking with a lot of empathy, understanding where a person's coming from is really important. Being able to speak within a person's value system is really important. So for instance, let's say I'm debating immigration with a conservative. I'm probably not going to be appealing to, immigration is important because it increases the diversity of our country. Conservatives not going to give a fuck, not going to care about that. Conservative won't care about that at all. So instead, my arguments are going to be heavily economic. I'll say like, we should have more immigrants because, bigger input of supplies to our economy is a really good way to grow the overall economy. We want to be competitive in the world. And why would we let Mexico, have all of their good workers when we could steal the best ones and make our economy better? Wouldn't that be better for us? So those would be two things to think about, I guess. And there's a million more on both of these sides, but be aware of the topics that are outside of your control and what can't change. Be aware of what's in your control and then, work with those. And then the two for in your control are, be empathetic and then argue from within somebody else's frame of belief, to summarize. Sorry.
That's good. That's a really good way to frame knowing your audience. Go ahead.
When you begin research by debate, what's your go-to place?
When you begin your research process, where's the first place you go?
It super depends on the particular topic. So for Israel, Palestine, that was a big one that I've been researching a lot. For that, I literally just open the Wikipedia of history of Israel, and I'll just run through and read every single thing about that. And then as you come across certain topics, that'll give you like the skeleton. You can flesh it out by if there's important books that people recommend for a particular topic, you can do that. If there are important research papers for a topic, you can start reading that. If there are articles or documentaries and stuff, you can go through that. These are all things that I did for that topic. For right now, the topic I'm supposed to be researching has to do with immigration in the United States. And for that, I literally I think I Googled like U.S. immigration system, and I got a big paper by a company that kind of explains and outlines all of the U.S. immigration stuff. And I just read that paper and started taking notes. And then from that skeleton, I might just ask a question. Like I've got a topic on like illegal immigrants and their impact on the economy. So I might just Google like illegal immigrant study fiscal impact, and then just start reading research. And I'm sure in the process of reading research, articles will pop up from The Atlantic, from Vox, from Scientific America, from the Wall Street Journal, whatever, and I'll read through articles. And every time I get like pieces of information that I don't have the answer to, if they reference something I don't know, I'll just Google that and start reading that. The most important thing when you're doing research is in the beginning, you just have to be willing to read. There's no shortcut to like, just read this source or just read this particular thing. You just have to be willing to sit down and read a bit to develop like the vocabulary and the fluency in that topic to understand the information that you need, if that makes sense. Or in the case of you guys, if you're in college, I guess you have teachers and they can tell you what to read, which is way more helpful than trying to figure it out on your own, but yeah.
I want a t-shirt that says you can't shortcut the reading. That's pretty good. I like that. Who else has their hand up? Yeah.
I guess how do you approach whenever you're like being proven wrong?
Did you get that one?
How do you approach being proven wrong?
Yeah, that was the question. I guess the first question is, have you ever been proven wrong, Stephen?
Never. When it comes to being proven wrong, there's a little bit logically that you have to think about, but this is going to be mainly an exercise in character and I guess emotional regulation and I guess the composition of yourself. Let me give an example. I think that when I argue certain positions, there are two big things that I try to keep in mind because I want flexibility to move off these in the future if I'm wrong. I don't want to be trapped emotionally because these have become part of like the narrative of who I am. So let's say that I believe in, let's say that I think that socialized healthcare is a good thing in the United States. I want a single payer option top down in the United States for our medical system. The way that I would think about this and the way that I would talk about this is I would make two very important cutouts. I would say, I support single-payer healthcare because of a moral end that will never change. So the moral end might be, I support single-payer healthcare because I want the most amount of people in the United States to be covered by insurance and to be able to access affordable care in a hospital. Okay. The really important part of that statement is the moral part, not the process. The process doesn't really matter. It's just delivering the moral outcome. What this allows you to do in the future is, if a study or research or whatever comes out, or European countries start switching to multi-payer models en masse, or if they ditch their public options or their single-payer systems altogether, and they say, oh, well, actually, we can deliver better healthcare if we do a fully private system. Well, for me personally, emotionally, my attachment was never to the single payer. My attachment was to the outcome. My attachment is to covering as many people as possible and giving them affordable medical care. So I can actually really easily switch my position there emotionally because I'm not super invested in that position. I'm just invested in the emotional outcome. That's one thing to keep in mind. A second thing to keep in mind is you need to have an appropriate level of conviction for the particular positions that you have. So I might feel very strongly about a particular thing because I've done a lot of reading about it and because it heavily conforms with my my moral foundations. So I might say something like, in society, we should never be killing people for no reason. I can say that with a really high level of conviction. Empirically, I don't think systems work where you can kill people with no reasons. And morally, I think that people ought to have the negative freedom of being protected against, murder, basically. But if I were to have another position, like let's say, so personally, I think electric cars are probably important for greenhouse gas emissions in the future. I do think that, but I don't really know that much about it. I haven't done a deep dive study into how much it costs to produce an electric car and if there's more greenhouse gases emitted through all of that and blah, blah, blah. So I might say that, but my conviction there is 30, 40%. So in the future, if it comes out, oh, well, actually people did a ton of research and electric cars are worse for the environment. Oh, okay. Well, my conviction for that was really low and I hedged it appropriately so I can back off there. To summarize, when you're proven wrong on things, usually the reasons why people have a hard time changing their mind, assuming the external factors aren't involved, like the social groups or whatever, usually it's because that person is so emotionally invested in that position that it's kind of a part of their character. And saying, hey, your idea is wrong about this particular thing is basically the equivalent to calling somebody fat or stupid or another insult. You're attacking them, you're personally attacking their character, and they can't abide that, so they can't ever change their position on it. Yeah.
Just to reframe this, you avoid that emotional impact by trying to find the root axioms of the moral and ethical beliefs rather than entangling your sort of identity in the material or surface level machinations of how those things operate in the world.
Yeah, I try to. I'm not perfect. There are going to be times where I get emotionally invested in a position for sure, and it happens, but yeah, I just think it's important you have to create personal space to navigate away from things if they end up being incorrect, especially if they're things you have low convictions over. And you need to remember at the end of the day why you care about a particular thing. Nobody cares about rent control because they've got a strong conviction about what the structure of housing finance is. So they care about rent control because they don't want people to get kicked out of their apartments. So if rent control ends up being a really shitty mechanism for keeping people in their homes, then you should be able to dump that position incredibly easily because the attachment isn't to the policy, it's to the moral outcome you're attempting to effect with that policy. Yeah. People get really hung up on the policy sometimes, though, and they don't actually care about the outcomes. So when the outcomes end up changing, they still stay stuck on the policy, and then you're not actually, accomplishing what you want. Yeah.
That's a really good point. What else, team?
It's not a simple one. How did you find your name? Did you just pick it out from dramatic standpoint? I know you get this one a lot, probably.
How did you choose Destiny as a stream name?
Basically, a long time ago, I was a gamer. Yeah. So my initial name was Neo Destiny. I think when I was 16 or something. And I cut the Neo off and I'm just Destiny, and I started streaming. And my initial foray into streaming was as a professional gamer. So Destiny fit as a game, as a name for a gamer. And then I slowly transitioned into politics in 2016, but I already had all the branding for Destiny. I've got YouTube Destiny, I've got Instagram Destiny, I had TikTok Destiny. So I don't know. It's kind of weird because obviously it's not a very serious name for doing politics, but it works.
Did you have a follow-up there?
Well, mostly because there is a game series by Bungie under the same name moniker.
Oh, the Bungie game series, Destiny?
Yeah, don't remind me.
I don't think he's... Yeah.
I have no association. I'm waiting for it to die so they stop hogging my SEO, but yeah.
Sorry, Steve. I was disgusting. Anyone else? What else you got, team? Anything? I wondered if you would have a quick conversation with me. I wonder if I could ask you a couple questions. Would that be all right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So specific questions about specific things. Like, for example, how do you, what's your position on the Electoral College?
You're really gonna, are you, as opposed to what, like doing like a popular vote or something?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you a macro and then a micro, okay? On the macro, I think that for the structure of our government to function, I think it's okay that there are citizens that are disproportionately represented, because I think it's important to represent both citizens in the United States and to represent individual states in the United States. So when you look at something like the Senate, in the Senate, a state is given 2 seats in the Senate, irrespective of the amount of citizens living there. If you look at the House, it's generally more favorable towards larger populous states, more populous states, although it still technically favors per citizen the smaller states because of how the apportionments work. But so something like the Senate and the House divide, I understand, and I'm supportive of that. When you look at the Electoral College, in my mind, I feel like we have enough representation for states in the Senate, and the House is already favoring voters in smaller states more than larger ones, if you look at the per capita apportionment of a representative to a citizen. So I don't know if there's a strong argument for why the Electoral College needs to be structured the way that it is. That being said, changing the structure of the Electoral College would actually probably be pretty difficult. It would probably require a big change to the Constitution, because technically citizens don't vote for president, states vote for president, and that's where the Electoral College kind of comes from. But at the very least, I'd be more in favor of like states, at least states should all split their EC vote up. I think that would be more interesting. But yeah, in general, I wouldn't be against a total reformation of the Electoral College, just because the president is kind of elected by popular vote. That's kind of what people think. But it's just more, it goes towards Electoral College votes. And yeah, but yeah, that's like my micro position on it.
I admit that I was hoping I could find something to disagree with there, but that's kind of my position also.
Wow. Well,
go ahead. Did you have something to say?
So on the kind of topic of the Electoral College, obviously the proposal is the gerrymandering of the districts, which kind of help the states get, more in one side or the other. What's the side on gerrymandering?
How do we deal with gerrymandering, and is it a problem, or how big a problem is it?
I mean, I've read a couple of papers on this. Gerrymandering is hard because I think there's no way, like every district, if you want to draw fair districts, they're going to look weird. Like if we were to draw districts naturally or organically, how we feel they might look on a map, conservatives are going to be heavily favored there, because I think liberals tend to be more concentrated in the areas that they live in. And if you draw districts with heavy concentration of liberals, if they're like 80-20 split, and if conservative districts tend to be like 60-40 split, then just because of how the math works on a population, you're going to end up always favoring conservatives if you don't draw weird districts. But then when you draw weird districts, people accuse you of gerrymandering. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if districts are even a good way to like do anything. Maybe I just don't know enough on the local level. Like what, like does a particular politician really represent like a particular district in a state, or are they more representing like the entire state in the House? I don't know. I don't know. I feel like something needs to change with districting, but that the answer isn't just like have gerrymandering or get rid of gerrymandering. Like I don't know if districting should even be done at all. I'm not sure. I don't have a strong opinion on that though, because I haven't done like a ton of reading about it. Yeah.
I once read an article about mathematical distribution of like populations and districts.
Yeah, but if you're going to do that, at that point, why district at all? Why not just say like, oh, well, let's just apportion, this number of people and then have the entire state vote on it? I don't know.
Sure. I think the idea is that one representative has a vested interest in a specific area and then answers to those people in that specific area. So, someone who represents a rural district is going to have different interests than someone who represents an urban district potentially. And they want those district leaderships to reflect on some level an ethical or moral stance, or at least a political stance that the inhabitants of that district also have.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'm curious if that actually, and I might not follow politics at a local level enough, but does that actually happen, that like a local, like federal representative, not in your state legislature, but for the federal representatives, do they actually represent the individual districts they come from, or do they tend to vote in line with their state? I don't actually know the answer to that. Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know either. My suspicion is they are more likely to vote in line with their party than anything
Or
else.
that's what I mean, like their state and their party. So like this would be an interesting question. And if we were just like doing this on stream, I would like I could just Google like how different do the votes tend to be on legislation from people in different districts but in the same party. Like if I were to go to California and I were to Google like California House of Representatives votes by party, and if I were to sort out all the Democrats and all the Republicans, is there actually a lot of inter-party disagreement on both sides, or do they all vote like basically by party on legislature? But maybe they actually do differentiate a lot. So districting is important for that reason, for different geographies to be represented. Yeah, I don't know.
I would suspect not, but I would also be interested in that. My suspicion is that the party comes first, because when you want to pass something for your district, you're going to have to ask your party members to vote for that.
Yeah.
And that sort of like political favor trading is going to be the rule of the land. Good question. What else you got, team? There, yeah, go ahead. Oh, that's a really big question. I asked for your hot take on the Israel-Palestine conflict currently. I know that Steven's made a ton of content about this recently, but I'm not sure what kind of go you want to give it as an answer.
I mean, we can talk about this for hours. Depends on if you want to get boycotted from your university or not.
It's not my answer. It's yours. So
I think the short answer that I would give is I feel like both sides are, unfortunately, through a bunch of really stupid incentives, I think that both sides are heavily incentivized to continue the conflict. I think that as long as the war or as long as violence keeps up from Hamas or any Palestinians at all, I think that it empowers the right in Israel to make excuses to continue the blockade in Gaza and to continue the encroachment on the West Bank for more settlements. I think you just saw, I think Netanyahu just approved, was it another 3,000 settlement buildings expansions, I think in Area C in the West Bank. So the conflict and the continuing of the conflict seems to benefit the far right in Israel, and that they get to have an excuse to stay in power and to continue to encroach on Palestinian territory. But then on the other end, it feels like for the Palestinians, it feels like they feel like the conflict benefits them because it gives them a stronger seat at the table. It lets them negotiate or something, and it seems to galvanize a lot of support internationally for their cause. So in the form of like international aid, or right now, I guess it's weapons or support from Iran. I think the problem with this equation generally is that while both sides are incentivized to fight, I think that only Israel really gains from the fighting, and the Palestinians are continuing to lose. But I think there's a really bad miscalculation internationally where people think that if they just keep cheering on the Palestinians and encouraging them to fight, that at some point something magical is going to flip and happen, and all of a sudden they're going to get everything that they've wanted, or at least get some sort of like solid deal. And I think right now what needs to happen is I think the Palestinians need a leader that's willing to step up and make some like brave, potentially sacrifice some political popularity for making some decisions to negotiate something real with Israel, rather than kind of perpetually continuing the conflict so that nothing actually gets signed or done. And yeah, that's a very rough outline of my position, but yeah.
yeah. What's the most fun shape to eat?
The most fun shape to eat? Trying so hard not to make a your own joke. I don't know. What are the fun? Probably some candy bar. I would say rectangles, because most candy bars are rectangles. That's what I would say. So probably that.
Wow, rectangles is the first.
Yeah. Well, what do you mean that's a first? How many shapes are there to choose from? What are all the?
A lot of people like circle. Circle's a popular one. A lot of people like these cakes.
Wait. What's circle? First of all, circle is a two-dimensional shape. Okay. Although rectangles are too. Okay, but what's a circle? What do you eat as a circle? I'm assuming you mean spheres. So like what? Like pizza, apples?
Like pizzas, cakes, pies, oranges, those things are all round. But my counterpoint to that was actually when you eat a pizza, you eat a slice of pizza, which is a triangle. So and a cake also, perhaps a triangle is a more delicious shape.
Okay, but like steaks are typically more rectangularly shaped. All the candy bars are rectangularly shaped. Lasagna should be shaped like a rectangle. Okay, these are better foods. All right.
That's a good point. Yeah.
How many shapes of pasta there?
There are a lot of different shapes of pasta. That's true. But a lot of pasta is rectangular shaped, and then dried and twisted while it dries. No, you're right. That's true. Linguine, fettuccine, they're rectangular shapes. Rectangle is a strong one. I like that,
Thank
Stephen.
you.
Anyone else? Yeah.
So how do you debate in a position where your sources are repeatedly getting, like your normal sources are getting repeatedly downtrodden upon?
Can all right. So the question is, how do you debate from a position where your sources are either really weak or being discredited? Am I hearing that right?
Yes, you're hearing that right.
Okay.
Well, are they bad sources or is your opponent silly?
Your opponent's being silly.
So in okay, so philosophically, your notion of like what truth is and how you arrive at truth, there has to be that fundamental agreement on both sides before the conversation can progress. Depending on who you're talking to, you might need to establish that epistemic foundation. You might need to establish that foundation of how we figure out truth before you get into the actual meat or empirics of your argument. So if I'm going to argue with somebody about COVID vaccines and I know this person is like a huge populist, a huge like far right, I shouldn't be giving political examples, but whatever. If I know that this person doesn't trust the FDA, doesn't trust the CDC, doesn't trust big pharma or any of the academic institutions, I'm not going to have an argument with this guy and start citing, research that's supported by the CDC, the FDA, like or any big pharma or any educational institution, because they're not going to believe it, right? So if you're too far apart, and unfortunately this is the case for a lot of America today, and it's a huge problem, but if there's too big of an epistemic divide between you and the person that you're talking to, it's kind of like trying to argue with somebody suffering schizophrenic delusions about how many people are in the room. You can't. It's impossible. You can't do that. Or if you do it, it has to be through trickery. You've got to appeal in a really roundabout way, and another way of getting to the answer to your argument. So, like, let's say let's do the COVID debate. I've used this one sometimes. Let's say for vaccines, somebody's arguing about whether or not the mRNA vaccines did anything or helped at all. If I know that they're very politically different than me and they're not going to agree with any of the sources I use, I'm not even going to bother to cite the research. What I might say instead is, oh, well, if you think the mRNA vaccines are a really huge conspiracy to make Americans in the Western world sick, why isn't Xi or Putin saying anything about this? Why is it that countries that hate America, that have every incentive to call out how horrible this vaccine is and how much it's poisoning us, why aren't they making public statements about that? Because that's kind of, I guess, this goes back to earlier to my argument of work within somebody else's bubble. I would try to work within their conspiratorial, I'm being very loaded here. I would work within their bubble of how they explain the world, and I would try to point them in that direction and say, oh, well, if you don't believe that the companies here are being truthful, why would you believe Russia? Or why would you believe China? And if you believe they're being truthful, why wouldn't they call out the vaccine? That would be how I would try to work that. But you're getting into like very weird territory there, and if you're not super adept at navigating weird territory like that, you might get caught in even dumber conspiracies. Like, oh, well, didn't you know that Russia and China are also part of like the global government to force vaccines down our throats? Like everybody gets something out of it. It's like, okay, well, whatever, I guess, yeah. So yeah, but that's the only way you could do it. But you have to establish some epistemic similarity to a person you're arguing with. Can we agree on sources? Can we agree what a good source looks like? Can we agree on like who we can share for resources? If you can't agree on that, then it's hard to have a reasonable conversation, right?
That's well said. The foundation of this class is the idea that a lot of the problems we are facing in contemporary and America and the world in general stem from the fact that we can't agree on basic fundamental epistemological or otherwise foundations of reality. Right? We don't have a shared reality, or that shared reality is fraying.
Yeah.
Because of so much disinformation and misinformation. And so we're partially about trying to figure out how we can approach those things in this class. So thanks for saying that. That's pretty helpful.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's important when you talk about that, though, an epistemic foundation isn't going to be like, do cops kill black people for no reason, right? The epistemic foundation, that's way down the road of like the really fundamental questions you have to ask are, hey, like, how do we figure out how truthful a particular thing is? What type of a source would we trust? What type of a what type of research is good research? What are good questions to ask when you're researching something? What are good methodologies to ensure that we're arriving at a truthful conclusion? Those are the epistemic foundations that you have to build. Because some people will say a lot of the things that I'm saying, like, oh yeah, we have to live in a shared reality. And rather than talking about a system of tools that you might use to ascertain the validity of a belief system, people are like, we have to be in a shared reality. We all need to use common sense. And here are 10 like fifth order abstracted beliefs that you have to believe in, otherwise you're delusional. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, you begged away the entire difficult question, and now I just have to agree with all your applied position. We're not even talking about epistemology. We're way off into something different at that point. Yeah.
I just want to say that I did not pay Stephen to say that, and I did not prompt him, right?
I just question like
that was totally of his own free
Wait, why
will.
is there something? Is there something you say in class, or?
Yes, that's like my first 3 classes. I just said all of those things
Oh, well,
that
good
you
for
just
you.
said.
Nice job. All right.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Now, would you, so all of the points you brought up were for like arguing in person or debating in person, how would you go about putting that on paper when you're not directly looking at it? Would you take different approaches?
Yeah, so a lot of the student is asking that a lot of the things that you've said so far in terms of suggestions and techniques seem to be more applicable to speaking in real time to someone, whereas they have to write papers. So are there different techniques that you might use to, write those things down to create these, rhetorical, convincing, persuasive measures and a structured sort of writing as opposed to just debating or talking with someone?
That it's a totally different thing. That's like asking the difference between like boxing and like street fighting with weapons. I think that if you're being asked to write a paper for a class, rhetorically, I mean, rhetoric is not even, you're not really even thinking about that. Usually just you're answering a prompt, unless you're in a specific writing class where you're given a prompt that's supposed to exercise, like a broad range of, pathos, ethos, logos, like a huge range of rhetorical skills or something. But typically for writing a paper, you're not generally, or hopefully you don't have to generally think about that. Like if I'm given a paper by an English professor and they're like, hey, you need to defend why this Shakespearean play, why Romeo and Juliet is better than The Merchant of Venice, right? Well, if I was arguing with a teacher about that, if it's like a 35-year-old dude that doesn't have a girlfriend, I might say something like, oh, well, a girlfriend's more likely to go see, Romeo and Juliet than The Merchant of Venice. So you should like that one instead. But if I'm writing a paper in an English class, I'm never going to use an argument like that because the teacher probably doesn't want to see an argument like that. So I think that if you're writing essays or persuasive stuff, that should be like on rails. You're usually given a very specific set of guidelines for what you're writing about, and then you just have to answer the prompt. At that point, I think you're engaging in like, it's less like rhetoric and it's more like, I don't know if you say like prop logic or basic philosophy stuff, to where you just have to read the prompt and understand what you need to respond to the prompt with to prove the affirmative of whatever argument you're asked to provide. So if somebody says like, why were settlers bad for early Native Americans, in early U.S. history or in early American history? And my response is like, well, eventually we moved from serfdom and feudalism into capitalism. That would be dumb because it doesn't respond to the prompt. But that's not really a question of rhetoric. That's just a question of like basic logic and philosophy, I guess. Yeah.
So they're writing a researched persuasive essay
Mm-hmm.
on a topic of their choosing that is like a current sociopolitical of current sociopolitical importance.
Mm-hmm.
So the prompt is a lot more vague and they have a lot more leeway, and a part of it is about discerning the sheer reality or truth of the situation, and like doing the research and approaching that thing.
Okay.
It's actually less about a debate, which I think might be part of the translation issue here, right? Because I'm not asking you as the paper isn't supposed to be a debate. It's supposed to be like an exploration and then, making an argument about why a certain thing is the way it is. Now that said, Stephen might have some good, ideas about how, once you've done the research, how to present that in the most persuasive manner.
Yeah, so what I would do, there's There's one huge thing you should do, and I think it's a huge mistake that people make. Okay, if you wanted to do that, if you're writing a persuasive essay, persuasion means changing people's minds, meaning that your essay needs to be aimed at a person that disagrees with you. I think that one of the biggest reasons why people fail with persuasion is they tend to make a persuasive argument that's aimed at people that already agree with them. The best example of this is when you're talking about somebody who's pro or anti-abortion. If you're pro-life and you want to go out and you want to argue against abortion, the way that they try to do it is by saying like, oh, well, fetuses are important. No, I'm sorry, they don't say fetuses. Babies are important. We don't want to murder babies. This is an evil thing to do. But it's like, okay, well, if somebody thinks they're a baby and not just a fetus or a collection of cells, then, I mean, they already agree with you. So if you're anti-abortion, why would you call yourself pro-life? You're already poisoning all of your arguments to only be heard by people that already agree with you. And then same thing with people that are pro-choice, right? Oh, well, what do I have to be anti-choice to disagree with you? Like pro-choice people will say, oh, well, it's just a bundle of cells. You should be able to have an abortion anytime you want. It doesn't matter. And like, okay, well, if you think it's a bundle of cells, they already agree with you, obviously. So why would you start from that premise? So if you're writing a persuasive paper and you're trying to debate something, what I would say is after you've picked the topic, let's say that your topic has to do with immigration, okay? If you want to debate in favor of immigration, in my opinion, the worst place to start is with the pro-immigration arguments. What you want to start with are the anti-immigration arguments. If I was writing a pro-immigration paper, I'm not going to make the argument of we need to increase the diversity of our country and it's important to help other people out. Because people that are super anti-immigration probably don't agree with either of those two premises. They don't care about helping other people out or diversity or whatever. That's not usually what their main goals are. Their main goals might be about protecting the native population, like from like job displacement or from budget displacement, right? They don't want more money to be spent on illegal immigrants than natives. And they might be really concerned about things like security, right? So when I write the paper, those might be the two huge things that I focus on. I might say like, hey, if you really care about the health of your current citizens, here's how immigration actually helps people in the job markets, right? Here's how secondary positions are created when low-skilled labor even comes in and allows people to move into higher paid jobs. And when it comes to security, having an easier way to get into the country legally decreases the amount of legal, blah, 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 right? That's how I would approach that topic. So find the topic, find out what the arguments against it are, and then write the paper addressing the arguments against it. Don't just harp on things that everybody on your side already agrees with, because that's not that persuasive then. Because if they agreed with those presumptions, they'd already agree with your endpoint conclusion. Yeah.
So effectively, you're not supposed to create. It's basically a larger version of "Don't preach to the choir." You already agree that why sing about it to your own singers?
I heard Peter Singer and don't preach to the choir. Peter Singer is a smarter guy than I am, and you shouldn't preach to the choir. So I probably agree with both halves of what you just said.
Yeah, we haven't. You're sort of anticipating me there. We haven't talked about anticipating counter arguments yet, but that's a lot of things that Stephen was just talking about, and I think it's super useful. So yeah, good. Anyone else? I'm gonna say this is the last chance, and then we're gonna let Stephen get back to his stream this evening. Yeah. Legislation that attacks the separation of church and state. What's your do you think that is do you think it's a hot button issue, or will it be, or what's your general take on it?
Is there legislation right now that people are trying to use to attack the separation of church and state, or what do we mean more specifically by that?
I'm not familiar, but are you saying that you've read some recently, or they're trying to get stuff passed, is what you're saying?
Well,
Yeah. So nothing that looks like it's going to pass, but like this continuous. So if I can sort of take this and make a little analogy with it, right? So the idea of overturning Roe v. Wade, which now has happened, right? That sort of lobby that was in favor of overturning Roe v. Wade started, or I guess never really ended since Roe v. Wade, began, or was a Supreme Court case. And it was a constant barrage of lobbying and small bills and local things and statehoods and that sort of like constant push of finding ways to work the system in their favor until eventually they got the result they were looking for. And I guess my take on what you're saying is you think that the separation of church and state is being attacked in a similar manner. Yeah. What do you think about those sort of tactics, Stephen? Like, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the history of Roe v. Wade and like how,
So
religious fundamentalists attacked it.
Here is what I would say. This is going to be a super boring, super nerdy answer. I think it is incredibly important that you don't even have to, because nobody does this, so actually who cares? But if you want to have a good understanding of any of these things, I think it is crucial to at least read the majority opinion ruling on a particular case. I would say that of all the people that talk about Roe v. Wade, I would say less than 2% of them have any idea what that ruling is, like what it actually means for the Supreme Court to make abortion a protected thing, or like what like substantive due process means, or where certain rights for abortion even came from, or like how this plugs in constitutionally to what we have, the legal arguments that Roe and then Casey ended up resting on were tenuous, where they were. It's a lot. Without diving into it, it's a lot. Yeah. If you've got like law, I don't know what you guys study in school or what your electives are, but this is what I would say. When you're studying court cases like this and you want to have an intelligent legal discussion about it, the Supreme Court decisions and the writing is pretty accessible. It's pretty easy to read. I know that when you think about like Supreme Court writing, you think about like legalese, you're thinking complicated and sophisticated, corporate contracts that just look like the terms of service for any program you download. But generally, if you read opinions from Supreme Court justices, they're pretty accessible. And they don't take you as long to read as you think. It would be really good to read through what they have to say and what their legal analysis is for these particular cases to get a grounding of what the good legal arguments are for and against it. And I think that being able to argue from a functional system, like structure, procedure point of view is a much stronger argument than just screaming into the wind of like, well, I think abortion should be protected, or I think that life should be protected. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to getting these court cases through, it doesn't actually matter what the emotional arguments are. What's really going to matter is the process and procedure on the legal side. So that would be my recommendation for if you have strong opinions about that, is to really try to read. And Roe is a really complicated case when you get into like enumerated and unenumerated rights and how they constructed the right to have an abortion. Sorry, it's kind of a vague answer, but there's not an easy legal answer for that. Roe is a very contentious case, and anybody that's honest will admit that. If you ever come across him, he's like, oh no, like obviously the Constitution should allow you 100% to have the right to have an abortion. That's not true. That case is very contentious for a lot of really good reasons, but also there were good reasons to keep it. There's the concept of stare decisis, I think, where once the court has made a decision, especially a watershed one, other decisions follow, and you leave those. Even if you don't necessarily agree with the legal decision, you might leave those. But even longstanding ones, like the separate but equal clause, might get overturned without any constitutional amendments either, because people think the decision was really, really bad. So yeah, sorry, this is a really unsatisfying answer. Law is a system and structure that needs to be respected. And if you want to have strong opinions about it, you have to read the actual words of the people making the decisions, and not just like an article or have an emotional feeling about what's at stake. Sorry, that's a long and very cold and kind of convoluted answer, but hopefully that makes sense. Yeah.
Quick follow-through question. Do you think that the Supreme Court justices have been appointed will continue along the lines that they have so far in terms of their decision-making processes?
I think most people agree that their decisions are about in line with what they should be, that we haven't seen like insane decisions from a crazy partisan court yet. So they're probably, they are conservative decisions. It is a conservative court, and you can expect to get conservative decisions out of them. But I mean, like that part of the reason why I think the Supreme Court has grown so much in power is because of our gridlock on our legislative body, and that's caused by the gridlock in our population, right? It's kind of sad that if you think about it, a lot of our progressive or liberal values have been furthered by the Supreme Court, right? Things like abortion or things like gay marriage have essentially come from the Supreme Court because we can't make laws about it because Congress can't work together to get anything done. And I think that's people will look at Congress and blame the process, Congress, but it's really a reflection of how divided we are as Americans. We have to fix that.
Yeah. All right, two more real quick questions and we're done. Number one, I noticed you have a gun on the wall behind you. Is that a new addition? Did you recently buy a firearm?
No,
I've always been a gun owner.
I've always been a gun owner. I got pistols. I'm ready for this. I'm ready to fight. Sorry, I don't know how edgy I can be in here. No, it's a shotgun I use for trap shooting. It's a really nice shotgun, and trap shooting is fun.
Second question, not totally unrelated. Do you have advice for young gamers or streamers out there? Because I know we have a lot of there's a big gaming population in this school.
When it comes to gaming and streaming, I think that you should view that as it's the same as like going pro in the NBA or something, except maybe even harder or not as hard, I guess. Depends, because you don't get sponsorships or scholarships to play. There's no NCAA esports, or at least I'm not aware of it. This might sound mean. I think that if you've been playing for a while, by the time you get to college, you should know if you've got the potential to go pro in a game, or know if you've got the potential to go big in streaming or YouTubing. Some people just have very outgoing personalities. They can make people laugh, like they're just really good at that type of entertainment, and you'll know it. You'll know it from your groups of friends. You'll know it from your conduct in class. You'll know it from your out-of-class social circles. You'll have an indication of this. And if you feel like you've got potential to do that, then you should invest some time in it. I wouldn't skip school in anything for it unless you're already starting to grow really big and there might be potential that you don't want to miss. You could theoretically go back to school and drop it and do that. But there has to be like a sound, good reason to do so. If you've been streaming for 4 years, or you have a YouTube channel for 4 years, and on your YouTube channel you've got 127 followers, you probably don't want to drop out of class to pursue that. But if you're streaming full time and you've got 150 average viewers and you're making $1,000 a month on this and you're only doing it for a couple hours each night, it might be worth investing more time into it. But that's a really hard decision to make when you're in college and you're trying to figure out how to balance your life. So just be very wary and be very careful of that. All of the data so far, despite what people might say, all the data so far still heavily supports getting your bachelor's degree, your undergrad. In almost every single circumstance, this confers greater wage premiums on you than almost anything else you can do in life at this point. So yeah, I mean, grabbing your degree and working on whatever YouTube or stream stuff on the side is still a really good choice, I think, yeah.
Thank you. Is it quick? Go ahead. What?
You brought up earlier with the innovation debate, where what happens if you get a counter argument that is completely valid in, let's say you do kind of agree with, but it goes against your point?
How do you deal with really strong counter arguments that go against your position?
Which one?
This was about this. The example was about immigration, but in general, how do you deal with counterattacks or some sort of destruction of your position? I
mean, you should be able to argue both sides of a position in any possible way that anybody else could. If you've done a lot of research on your position, you'll have come across the counter arguments, and you should be able to argue that as effectively as anybody you'll argue against. If somebody can argue a counter argument better than you can, then how can you argue a counter argument in response to it, right? If you don't even know the counter argument. So for when it comes to things like immigration, right? I would argue on sides relating to maintaining the character of the country, that if you've got too many immigrants from different countries with fundamentally different values, you might end up fundamentally altering the character of your country because they're going to change the demographics of your voting base, and then you're going to start to vote for things that a Native American or somebody that's been here in the country for hundreds of years generationally might not necessarily agree with, but you're going to lose control of your ability to vote for certain policies because of the type of people that you let into the country. You can also make the argument that greater levels of legal immigration, that you can say that, well, they help you because they help your economy, but you could also say that there might be some Native workers that are displaced, that sometimes things look good on paper, but when you start doing them a ton, they actually end up being really bad for certain people. For instance, things like NAFTA were good on paper and they benefited the whole economy, but there are certain sectors of the economy that hurt quite a bit. So if a little bit of legal immigration has helped our low-income workers on the South, which generally it does, maybe a lot of it doesn't help. And now when you've started to let a lot of people in, now these people that are in are going to be able to use family immigrant visas to get their family in, and you might actually be destabilizing the country to your south because now you're brain draining the best of their society. So now you're hurting Mexico while you're also kind of hurting your native population, while you're also changing the fundamental voting demographics of your population. And then, so I could go on and on and on, and then I could give you the counter arguments for all of these. But for any point that I argue, I'm always going to have both sides of it incredibly well known, because I don't want to be in an argument with somebody and it's holy shit, I just got completely surprised by whatever this guy said and I've never even considered this argument before. If somebody brings up, this would be a rule of thumb, if you're in an argument with somebody and they bring up something you've never heard before, you've almost certainly lost that argument. You're completely screwed at that point. Yeah. Sorry, okay, yeah, that was
all right. Stephen, thank you so much. I promised we would not keep you more than an hour. So
Yeah, you're
I
good.
really appreciate it, all your time. And I'm getting a lot of nods and a lot of thumbs up and stuff. So yeah, thank you so much, Stephen.
Cool. Thanks a lot. Yeah, good luck. Have a good one.
Thanks again.
Bye. Okay, we were just saying that I now support the flat tax because of fucking conservative. Okay. Was that the first time in such an event, or has it happened before? Was what the first time? I've talked to this guy's class, I think, like 4 or 5 times. He just has me come in every year, and yeah. Are we ever gonna get through? Did we even start this article today? Okay, we've got 30 minutes, all right? Let's see how far we can get in this, because we didn't get anywhere in this. How do you make your money make you money? I buy cam girls and I lock them in my basement, and then I lie about their taxes and make them work for me. Okay. Can you give the TLDR for why Canada's immigration is the steel man for anti-immigration? I don't know what that means, but also Canada's there's a whole bunch of fucking weird, dumb things, so I'm not here to defend any of Canada's shit.